If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 171, Target. 2 weeks passed, and it was already late May. The third season of One Punch Man had officially entered the Monster Association arc. A group of S-class heroes launched a full-scale assault on the Monster Association's headquarters. For several consecutive weeks, the plot barely involved the protagonist, Saitama. After all, King had asked Bang to bring Saitama to him. That was King's only way to stay alive after barging into the Monster Association's territory. As for Saitama, after entering the underground base, he promptly got lost. Completely lost. As a result, he barely appeared in recent episodes, and the anime shifted its focus almost entirely to the battles between S-class heroes and dragon-level monsters. Zombie-Man, Child Emperor, Flashy Flash. Each of them stepped forward in turn. The ratings did not skyrocket, but discussion grew hotter week after week. Every Friday night when a new episode aired, One Punch Man topics rushed into the top 3 spots of the national trending list. And today was Friday once again. From early morning, fans could no longer sit still. Online forums, comment sections, and chat groups exploded with anticipation. Capital TV stations' viewership began climbing from 6 o'clock in the evening. By 7, even during commercial breaks, the ratings never dipped below 3.5%, clearly higher than usual. By 7:30, discussion of the anime had completely flooded the internet. After several weeks of spotlighting S-class heroes, most fans assumed tonight would follow the same pattern. But this time, something different happened. After nearly a full month of absence, Saitama finally returned. No one could have predicted that while wandering aimlessly underground, he would stumble straight into the lair of the Monster King, Orakai. Everyone already knew the outcome. Still, REI had no intention of rushing through it. The studio animated the battle between Saitama and Orakai with a movie-level budget. The clash lasted a full 5 minutes, giving the so-called Monster King every ounce of dignity he deserved. In REI's past life, Orakai's original design in the redrawn manga had been infamous among artists. His irregular, serpentine body fused with flesh made him a nightmare to draw. But his presence in battle was overwhelming. REI refused to cut corners. So when the episode aired, viewers across Japan simply leaned back and watched in silence, absorbing the god-tier production quality. Then came the final shot. The moment everyone had been waiting for. Saitama's fist smashed Orakai's head to pieces. No twist. No reversal. Exactly what fans came to see. The stronger the monster, the cleaner the one-punch finish, and the more satisfied the audience. That night, discussion exploded. So satisfying. Cheers to Orakai's exit. They hyped him so hard. Hundreds of beams, insane power, and still one punch. Classic. From what he showed, Orakai should be the second strongest monster so far, right after Boros. Not sure. I think he might not even beat the younger giant brother. Still, that animation was insane. Orakai might be gone, but if his figure comes out, I'm buying it. Monster King died too easily. Probably because his design was too annoying to animate, so Shirogane cut him early. But if even Orakai gets one shot, what's left of the Monster Association arc? The final boss is already gone. There's still Garu. Orakai was never the real final boss. Only Garu will make it to Saitama in the end. It's almost June already. Season 3 feels half over. I really don't want it to end. Why worry? Season 4 starts in July and will overlap with the final episodes of Season 3. So we're getting Seasons 5 and 6 too. No official word yet. No filings for 5 or 6. My friend works at Illumination Production Company. He said after Season 4, Shirogane Sensei might stop for a while. Stop at Season 4? No way. Not stop forever. Just pause. 4 seasons back-to-back, over 60 episodes, plus all his other projects. Anyone would need a break. No way. I can't stand waiting years for new seasons like other shows. There's nothing we can do. 4 uninterrupted seasons is already a miracle. The staff must be completely exhausted, they deserve a break. The next day, the latest episode closed at 6.89%, setting a new all-time record for the series. The fight choreography and storyboards left viewers stunned. Clips, GIFs, and short edits flooded every major forum overnight. With Orakai eliminated in a single punch, the pacing of Season 3 accelerated sharply. Then June arrived. And Hojimori Group made its move. They launched a full-scale advertising blitz. Open any anime website, Hunter x Hunter's premiere announcement popped up instantly. Offline, posters blanketed the otaku shopping streets of every second-tier city. Comic conventions were no exception, even the front pages of Dream comic journals carried bold ads promoting the upcoming anime adaptation. Season 1's production budget was only 300 million yen. Yet Hojimori Group poured just as much money into promotion, matching the production cost. The reason was obvious. At present, REI had 3 projects in motion. Setting aside Arcane, scheduled for next year, One Punch Man had long eclipsed Hunter x Hunter in overall popularity. And Hojimori Group could not tolerate that. Thus came the all-out push for Hunter. Their objective for the next quarter was singular and unmistakable: boost the manga's sales and siphon off part of One Punch Man's massive audience. If One Punch Man could dominate Japan and go viral overseas, why couldn't Hunter? The anime didn't just need to succeed. Its tankban sales had to explode, surpassing Echoes of the End, claiming the highest per-volume sales among all currently serialized manga. Only then could Hunter x Hunter truly be crowned the #1 manga in modern Japan. Chapter 172, Conception. Time slipped into June, and the temperature steadily climbed. Thanks to REI's deliberate pruning of redundant plot points from the original manga, the 3rd season of One Punch Man moved at a brisk pace. The S-class heroes of the Hero Association plunged straight into battle, clashing one after another with dragon-level monsters deep beneath the city. Naturally, the Japanese version of One Punch Man that REI created would never fully follow Murata's redraw. As the main illustrator, Murata's flashes of inspiration were undeniably brilliant. But once he began freely expanding the plot for more than 10 chapters at a time, the story started to feel unfocused, almost distorted, as if something had gone subtly wrong. The clearest example was Garu. In the original version, when Saitama faced a fully evolved Garu, the fight was no more strenuous than drinking a glass of water. Effortless, but not trivialized. In Murata's redraw, however, Garu and Saitama became evenly matched. Saitama was pushed to his limits. Garu ascended into a so-called god-level mysterious being, capable of destroying the planet with a single punch. Their battle escalated all the way to Jupiter, and Saitama ultimately had to rely on convoluted concepts like time travel to win. At that point, Saitama's character collapsed. The core concept of One Punch Man is simple and absolute. Even if you are a god, if you have a health bar, you die in one punch. No exceptions. That is why, in the Monster Association arc, REI resolutely followed one's original framework for the final confrontation between Saitama and Garu. That said, Murata's designs for Garu's 2nd and 3rd forms were simply too spectacular to discard. REI adopted them wholesale, integrating their visual impact without inheriting the narrative bloat. As a result, the anime version avoided the sluggishness REI remembered from his past life. Instead, fans now suffered from the opposite problem: it felt too fast, too clean, too efficient, and painfully incomplete. Every week, viewers were left wanting more. Why does this anime update so slowly? I need to see what happens after Tatsumaki, Psychos, and Orakai merge. Honestly, I'd rather watch Atomic Samurai get absolutely crushed by black sperm. This episode was perfection. I've never liked Atomic Samurai, trying to look cool in front of Lord Black Sperm. He deserves what's coming. I've cracked the code: the simpler a character's design, the more terrifying they are. I thought Black Sperm was a joke, just a panda-headed gag character. Who knew he'd be this absurdly strong? And his personality is amazing. He's a villain, but I can't help loving him. I actually prefer the fight between Psychos and Tatsumaki. It's just a shame, June's almost over, and Season 3 only has 2 episodes left. There's no way this arc finishes without a 4th season. Saitama's still lost after killing Orakai, the S-class heroes are barely holding on. This arc definitely isn't ending this season. There are so many characters, yet every single one of them is charismatic. That's just how One Punch Man works. It's a group portrait story. With over a dozen S-class heroes and nearly 10 dragon-level monsters, it's impossible to deeply explore everyone. If they tried, this arc would take 3 seasons to finish. Only 2 episodes left. I really don't want it to end. Why be sad? Season 3 ends mid to late June. 2 weeks later, Season 4 starts in the July summer slot. We'll binge it then. I just hope Garu gets a little stronger. Don't let him get one-punched again. At least let Saitama use a serious series move. Yeah, I just want something like the Boros fight. Boros really suffered from appearing too early. If Boros fought the Monster Association, what do you think the odds would be? 2080. That's insulting Boros. More like wiping them out 8 times in 2 minutes. Alright, I'm sleeping. Tomorrow morning the official Illumination Animation and Capital TV station sites open pre-orders for Season 3 figures and merchandise. I need to wake up early to secure a slot. Good night. Damn it, you rich people, can someone show a little mercy? I'm a student, I can't afford the merchandise. Is there anyone kind enough to send me a set? Go check Shirogana's account. There's a random giveaway tonight, 100 people will get free spots. The next day, the viewership rating for episode 10 of One Punch Man Season 3 stabilized at 6.88%. Although the anime had already become a phenomenon, even a phenomenon has its limits. Within Japan itself, the ratings for One Punch Man were unlikely to rise much further. But overseas, because of factors such as censorship delays and slower import schedules, many national television stations abroad had only recently begun airing the 3rd season. As a result, One Punch Man's popularity outside Japan surged at an astonishing rate. The number of overseas orders received by the merchandise companies cooperating with REI grew exponentially. This really is. Himari muttered, staring at the sales report in her hands at Illumination Production Company, then looking up at REI with envy. Earning millions every single day. The One Punch Man merchandise ecosystem involved countless distributors and agents, large and small, all sharing a portion of the profits. After all, if the IP was to expand globally, the participation of these partners was indispensable. Even so, the revenue that ultimately flowed back to REI, from merchandise sales and licensing alone, was still staggering. During the peak broadcast period of Season 3, REI's monthly income from the anime exceeded tens of millions. And even when the anime stopped airing, the income wouldn't disappear. It would merely dip, remaining at a high level for at least 1 or 2 years. Whenever a new season aired, the revenue would surge right back to its peak. This was precisely why so many animation studios dreamed of producing original anime. How much money could you make just by producing anime? The profit from one massively successful title easily surpassed the production fees from 50 ordinary projects combined. It's acceptable, REI said with a smile. Having seen far more outrageous IPs in his previous life, he felt calm about One Punch Man's current profitability. Compared to franchises like Demon Slayer, which had generated tens of billions globally through merchandise alone, One Punch Man's current earnings were still just the beginning. You call this acceptable? Himari stared at him, her expression unreadable. That's because it hasn't been adapted into a game yet, REI replied after a brief pause. There's still a huge revenue channel missing. The way you're saying that, Himari said slowly, are you planning to make a game? They had worked together long enough that she didn't hesitate to ask such a sensitive question. No, REI shook his head. My focus has always been on the work itself. Games are an important monetization path, but I don't have the energy to run a game company. He paused, then added calmly. But I do plan to collaborate with established game developers in Japan. I'll provide the IP, they'll handle the technology and development. Once the game is complete, we share the profits. Chapter 173, The Proposal. REI's words gave Himari a clear understanding of his way of thinking. Simply put, once a cultural work becomes popular, it almost always expands across 4 or 5 fields: manga, animation, games, film, and television. Animation and film/television are crucial for expanding an IP's visibility and cultural influence. But merchandise sales and game adaptations, more often than not, are the true pillars of monetization. Although Japan's animation and manga industries are already massive, the game industry is far larger. One game alone could rival the box office of an entire national film industry. Even mobile games adapted from manga like Naruto, which ended over 10 years ago, still generate 20 to 30 billion yen annually. Otherwise, the producers wouldn't keep pushing out the underwhelming Boruto series simply to maintain the Naruto IP's heat. The anime itself doesn't make much money, but by keeping the brand alive, the profits from other derivatives are enough to fund 100 such anime projects. Having worked so hard to elevate One Punch Man to its current level of popularity, REI naturally had no intention of letting such a massive revenue stream slip away. These Japanese game companies know my situation, REI said calmly. They understand that I'm completely new to the game industry. Quite a few major companies have already contacted me privately with very generous offers, hoping to buy out the game rights to One Punch Man. He didn't strictly need to share this with Himari. As partners, they worked in animation, not games. But beyond business, REI regarded her as a friend, and these matters weren't exactly secrets anyway. The major players in the industry were well aware of one another's movements. My only condition is simple, REI continued. I provide the IP. They provide the technology and distribution channels. Then we split the profits. And if they don't agree? Himari asked. Are you planning to build your own game studio? REI laughed. Of course not. A person's energy is limited. I'm only interested in the returns the game industry can bring, not in personally developing games. Professional matters should be left to professionals. Besides, he added, I'm not worried that no one will accept my terms. I'm not in a hurry, but these game companies are. They're terrified that their competitors will snatch the One Punch Man game rights first. In today's game market, there are plenty of companies with strong technical capabilities and solid distribution channels. But an IP as popular, and as perfectly suited for adaptation, as One Punch Man? In all of Japan, you can count those on one hand. And REI wasn't wrong. To many companies, his proposal, licensing only the IP, possibly adding some investment, and then demanding a proportional share of the game's long-term profits, seemed outrageous. Yet there were always a few companies willing to seriously evaluate the risk and reward. As a result, by June, REI's negotiations with several parties were progressing quite smoothly. Although REI planned to temporarily put One Punch Man on hold after completing the 4th season and the Garu arc, if a game adaptation proved successful, it wouldn't be impossible to release occasional post-Garu arc side stories to maintain the franchise's heat. For now, however, all cooperation remained in the negotiation stage, and no information had leaked to the market. Time passed quickly, and 2 weeks flew by. The 12th, and final, episode of One Punch Man Season 3 ended on a frozen frame. Tatsumaki, fighting Psychorikai, the fusion of the Esper Psychos and the Monster King Orikai, momentarily struggled as she prioritized protecting the other heroes. Exploiting this distraction, the fusion managed to pin Tatsumaki's hands and impale them with energy beams. Across other battlefields, the remaining heroes were also struggling. The long-anticipated world-famous painting finally appeared, Atomic Samurai being lifted by the hair by Black Sperm. The final shot of Season 3 focused on 3 figures. Garu, still evolving, attacking everything in sight, indiscriminately battling both heroes and monsters. Saitama, still hopelessly lost. And King, his king engine roaring, the thunderous pounding of his terrified heartbeat echoing through the Monster Association's corridors, his stiff expression making him look eerily calm, and terrifyingly powerful. Setting Garu aside for the moment, the instant scenes featuring Saitama and King appeared, the oppressive tension built up by the S-class heroes' desperate struggles vanished. In its place came something else entirely, anticipation. The anticipation surrounding Saitama goes without saying. The structure of One Punch Man is almost laughably simple. The heroes struggle. The heroes fall into despair. Saitama arrives. The monster is defeated. It's the same pattern from beginning to end, yet people never tire of it. After the conclusion of One Punch Man Season 3, time officially entered late June. With more than a week remaining before July, REI's daily workload began to include new responsibilities. Cooperating with press conferences and fan meetings organized by the Hojimori Group to promote the broadcast of the Hunter x Hunter anime. When Misaki came to collect the latest Hunter x Hunter manuscript, Mayu also briefed REI on his upcoming schedule. But my time has been extremely tight lately, REI hesitated. If I spend too much time on anime promotion, the manuscript output might. That's not a problem, Misaki interrupted gently. Your weekly page count already far exceeds that of most manga artists. Even if you occasionally draw a little less for a week, it won't affect the manga's popularity. She then grew more serious. Besides, Hunter is at a critical juncture right now. The average sales per volume have been hovering around 15 million for several weeks. Without an external stimulus, it'll be difficult for the ranking to rise further, it'll likely just stagnate. The anime broadcast is the perfect catalyst. If it goes well, it could push Hunter to an entirely new level. Misaki sighed. The ideal scenario would be for the Hunter x Hunter anime to premiere in July and take the quarterly ratings championship. Combined with the group's promotional push, the momentum would be incredible. But the problem is, Season 4 of One Punch Man is also premiering next quarter. She paused, leaving the implication hanging in the air. In the next quarter's animation market, the two works with the greatest potential are One Punch Man and Hunter x Hunter. Unfortunately, they're direct competitors. Competitors? Rei repeated, frowning slightly. He thought for a moment, then asked calmly. Why does everyone assume that? Misaki looked at him, surprised. Do these two works really have to be in a zero-sum relationship? Rei continued. Why can't it be a win-win? What do you mean? Misaki asked, already beginning to guess. I can cooperate with the Hojimori group in my capacity as the creator of One Punch Man, Rei said. Honestly, there's no faction war between the fans of my two works. If anything, they get along extremely well. If the group is willing, the Hunter anime and One Punch Man Season 4 could even be promoted together as a bundled campaign before they air. Fan conversion between the two is completely feasible. He smiled. At the end of the day, they're all Shirogana's fans anyway. The group might draw sharp lines between journals and IPS, but to me, there's no real difference. In Rei's previous life, crossovers and mutual promotion between popular series were common. One Piece had collaborated with Dragon Ball. Toriko had crossovers with One Piece before its anime launch. At their core, these were jump titles funneling traffic to one another. In Rei's case, it was even simpler, mutual traffic circulation among his own works. For him, this idea had no downside at all. For the Hojimori group, however, it depended on whether they were willing to let some traffic flow between Dream Comic and One Punch Man for the sake of Hunter's long-term growth. Misaki pondered for a moment. Your proposal? She said slowly. I can relay it to upper management. I'll leave it to you, Editor Misaki, Rei replied with a smile. Chapter 174, Crossover. Joint Promotion. Jensen, CEO of Hojimori Group, frowned slightly as Editor-in-Chief Han finished explaining the proposal during their briefing. Just past 40, Jensen had been placed at the helm of the group 4 years earlier. Under his leadership, Dream Comic Journal had climbed from 16.7 million weekly circulation, 4th place in Japan, to 20.7 million, now second only to Monogatari Comics' 26.2 million. The company's market value had soared. His position was stable. Mostly. There was only one blemish, one decision so stupid it still made his stomach churn. When Shirogane had first proposed serializing One Punch Man and Hunter x Hunter, Jensen hadn't even attended the meeting himself. He'd delegated it to his deputy chairman, who promptly rejected both proposals. That deputy had since been dismissed. Everyone in upper management understood the truth. He hadn't been fired for incompetence, he'd been sacrificed. Now Shirogane wanted a joint promotional campaign between One Punch Man Season 4 and the Hunter anime. Jensen felt faintly nauseous. If he agreed, it would look like he was crawling back, having once rejected these works, now promoting them together at full force. If he refused, it would look even worse. A crossover between Japan's top animated phenomenon and Hunter x Hunter's long-awaited adaptation was a textbook power move. Blocking it would be indefensible. Either way, he'd look foolish. Still, Jensen was a professional. He swallowed his discomfort and replied evenly. Understood. I'll convene a meeting this afternoon. If there are no objections. His tone was grim. Hunter premieres in 2 weeks. If we're doing this, it has to be fast. He knew the truth well enough. Hunter's opening ratings would inevitably trail One Punch Man. But after the summer season, One Punch Man would enter hiatus. No one knew when, or if, Season 5 would arrive. If Hunter could siphon even part of that audience, it might dominate the slot once One Punch Man stepped aside. Anime boosts manga. Manga boosts the journal. That feedback loop mattered far more than his pride. Understood, Han replied, wasting no words. The meeting itself was little more than formality. Everyone knew the decision rested with the CEO. And it appeared Jensen had chosen the least stupid option among 2 stupid ones. Han left the office smiling faintly and dialed his niece. Misaki, he said. Your proposal with REI has reached the top. Uncle Han, what did they say? They'll discuss it this afternoon, he replied. But you and Shirogane can be cautiously optimistic. Misaki understood immediately. The next morning, both the editorial and marketing departments were informed. By noon, Misaki received her assignment, liaise directly with Shirogane on the One Punch Man x Hunter crossover campaign. With less than 2 weeks before the summer season began, both sides moved at breakneck speed. Legal drafted contracts. Rei reviewed them, signed, and stamped his seal without hesitation. Beyond being the writer and investor behind the anime, Japan had worked with Hojimori Group for 4 years as a manga artist. Trust had long since been established. On June 24, Rei's personal account and Hojimori Group's official site simultaneously released the crossover visuals. One color page would grace the next issue of Dream Comic Journal. The anime community exploded. The image was simple and devastatingly effective. Gon, dressed in green, smiling brightly. Saitama, expressionless as ever. Their fists lightly touching. The reaction was instant. Although the two fandoms overlapped, many fans knew only one of the works. Just as Bleach fans had ignored Kubo's earlier zombie manga, or skipped Burn the Witch years later, casual audiences often missed sister works unless something dramatic dragged them in. This did. Hunter and One Punch crossover? For real. Why not? They're both by teacher Shirogane. Wait, Shirogane is a manga artist. You didn't know? I only watch anime. Had no idea. If his new show's starting, I'm in. Is Hunter good? Incredible. Not as meme-heavy as One Punch, but the Yornu arc, Kurapika, Uvajin, Crollo, Hisoka, Pakunoda, absolute gods. Watch it. You'll thank me. No fandom wars, both are masterpieces, just different flavors. One Punch fans, don't skip Hunter. Trust Shirogane. Hunter volumes average 15.2 million, 5th among concurrent Japan titles. Numbers don't lie. July 4, 9 p.m, Capital TV. I'm tuning in. I skip manga, no sound, no color, but anime? I'm there. Anything with Saitama gets my vote. I'm the opposite, a manga purist, but if they're crossing over, I'll finally buy the One Punch BDS. Everyone raves. I just hate Invincible MCS, but fine, I'll bite. First time realizing Shirogane writes anime too. Guess I've been living under a rock. Most people don't read credits. If you like Shirogane, binge One Punch, 3 seasons, 36 episodes. Chapter 175, July. In truth, the storm stirred up by the joint promotion of the two works far exceeded what most people in the anime industry had anticipated. One Punch Man had reigned as the most popular domestic animated series for nearly half a year. Hunter x Hunter was not yet the nation's top-selling manga, but it was undeniably the most discussed, and fastest-rising, title in recent memory. The campaign swept through both online and offline channels. Every major anime shopping district across the country joined in, from themed pop-ups to limited merchandise and street-wide collaborations. By the end of June, the fanbases of the two blockbusters had fused, carefully, temporarily. All eyes now turned toward the July anime lineup. The upcoming premieres groaned under the pressure, the competition was brutal. This included adaptations of many popular serials from the 6 major periodicals. These days, Shirogane might not be the most famous or critically revered creator in the industry. But when it came to sheer popularity among young audiences, no one could rival his drawing power. One Punch Man was already absurdly dominant. And now it was joining forces with Hunter x Hunter. Of course, the most awkward position in July belonged to the production team of Echoes of the End. Since its second season, the series had consistently claimed the top ratings spot every cour. Even at its peak, however, a single episode had only reached 6.11%, still short of One Punch Man's current 6.8%. The producers had long accepted that losing to One Punch Man didn't really matter. After all, it wasn't even a traditional manga-driven hit, and its success generated far less controversy within publishing circles. But Hunter x Hunter was different. The flagship title of Dream Comic, ranked second nationwide, versus the flagship of Monogatari Comic, ranked first. If Echoes of the End Season 6 were to lose to Hunter x Hunter, the repercussions would be severe. Comic fandom in this world was far more aggressive than in Rei's previous life. Hunter x Hunter's explosive rise had already put Echoes of the End fans on edge, relations between the two camps had been tense for months. Now, it had escalated into open warfare. Rei scrolled through the headlines. Over at Monogatari Comic, nearly every contracted manga artist had begun publicly rallying support for Echoes of the End Season 6 on their personal social feeds. Everyone understood that One Punch Man Season 4 was a monster. Its metrics were outrageous, and surpassing it was close to impossible. Losing to it was acceptable. There was no rule stating that the country's best-selling manga had to dominate every anime cour. Anime existed to drive source material sales and merchandise revenue. As long as that goal was achieved, first place in ratings was secondary. But losing to Hunter x Hunter was unthinkable. This was a clash of prestige between the two largest publishers in the country. A loss would alter how investors, advertisers, and distributors evaluated the commercial potential of both properties. Still, Rei thought as he shut his laptop, this confrontation had been inevitable. There could only be one number one. Hunter x Hunter had been serialized for a full year. From the Hunter exam, to the Zaldique family arc, then Heaven's Arena, and now the Your New City arc, widely regarded as second only to the Chimera Ant arc in overall impact. Momentum, fanbase, visibility, everything was in place. All that remained was the catalyst only an anime adaptation could provide. Rei intended to use the premiere to propel the manga's per-volume sales to the top of the national charts. Hojimori Group understood this. So did the conglomerate backing Monogatari Comic. From this point on, it was every publisher for itself. June ended in the blink of an eye. July arrived. On July 1st, Hunter x Hunter Volume 6 hit store shelves, and fans turned out in unprecedented numbers. By 7 or 8 in the morning, queues were already snaking outside major bookshops. Second-tier cities handled the surge without much trouble, but in the large metropolitan areas, dense populations meant local sellouts within hours. Restocks couldn't keep pace. Then came Friday, July 2. One Punch Man Season 4 resumed with the second half of the Monster Association arc. The profits Rei had accumulated allowed him to funnel virtually unlimited resources into the production committee. There were no compromises this time. The opening episode focused on two hopeless navigators, Saitama and the S-class hero Flashy Flash, before cutting to multiple battlefields where the Monster Association clashed with demon-level threats and A-class heroes. In terms of plot progression, the episode barely nudged the arc forward. The core questions remained unchanged. Could the Hero Association defeat the dragon-level monsters? And when Geru completed his evolution, who would finally stop him? Both threads advanced at a glacial pace. If Saitama entered the battlefield in earnest, everything would be over in 10 minutes flat. So the script did the only sensible thing. It sent him the wrong way. Anime, however, played by different rules than manga. Even minimal plot movement could still overwhelm viewers through side character spotlights, fluid choreography, and unapologetically extravagant animation. And overwhelm it did. Community reviews were ecstatic. The sheer amount of money burning on screen was impossible to ignore. The following morning, the ratings confirmed it. 6.79%. After a 2-week break, it was nothing short of spectacular. Anyone who had hoped to see Rei stumble walked away empty-handed. With that opening, One Punch Man Season 4 had effectively locked down the cour. Attention immediately shifted to the next contender. Saturday night at 8, Echoes of the End Season 6 premiered. It aired on the same network, Capital TV, as One Punch Man, just one day later, also at precisely 8 o'clock. By Sunday morning, its debut numbers were in. 6.01%. A full year after Season 5, the series returned without losing momentum. Though still trailing One Punch Man, the strength of its source material ensured that ratings would rise as the season progressed. And once Echoes of the End had taken the stage, the entire industry waited. All day Sunday, anticipation built toward the final reveal. Sunday night at 9, Hunter x Hunter made its television debut on Capital Television. The question hung heavy in the air. Which would claim the higher rating, Echoes of the End or Hunter x Hunter? And just how much destructive force would the One Punch Man x Hunter tie-in unleash? Chapter 176, Hunter Anime Premiere. From Sunday morning onward, Rei's fans were everywhere online. Whether they followed One Punch Man or Hunter x Hunter, large numbers of them began posting spontaneously, hyping the new broadcast and dragging casual viewers along with them. In Tokyo, some volunteers even took it offline, roaming anime shopping streets and convention halls, loudly announcing that Hunter x Hunter would be airing that night. On Capital Television, promotional spots for Hunter x Hunter ran far more frequently than usual. Naturally, fans of Echoes of the End refused to sit still. They transformed into full-time trolls, swarming anime forums and comment sections to trash Hunter's source material at every opportunity. But casual viewers in the country weren't naive. Toxic fandom culture had existed for years. Everyone understood a simple truth. If a work truly had no flaws, no one would bother attacking it. And if a title were genuinely worthless, no one would waste time hating it either. Who would bother trashing a grade schooler's doodles? A third-rate series doesn't even earn the trolls' attention. Only a work that inspires both loud praise and loud hate sparks real curiosity among bystanders. Even if it turns out to be trash, you still want a taste. At worst, you lose 20 minutes. By evening, posts supporting Hunter x Hunter had begun to outnumber the hate. In pure manga popularity, Hunter was still a step behind Echoes of the End, which had been serialized for 7 years. But once the fan army jumped in, the balance shifted completely. Only 1 hour until Hunter airs. I wonder how far episode 1 will go. At most, Gon will set sail, maybe we'll even meet Leorio. Quick primer for newcomers, the manga isn't slow, but the world building is. Before Nen appears, it's a fun, solid adventure. Once Nen shows up, it becomes god tier. Just hope casual viewers stay patient. At least until Psycho Hisoka appears. Even if you don't like Gon, you'll love Hisoka. Honestly, I'm more worried about whether anime Hisoka will sound twisted enough. Exactly. Casting's my only concern, can his voice actor really nail that unhinged vibe? But Hojimori Group's cast list looks solid. And the OP, ed, and insert songs were composed by teacher Shirogane again, just performed by others this time. Shirogane, I kneel. That guy's so freakish I don't even know where to start roasting him. That night, Hunter fans chatted cheerfully all the way up to 9 o'clock. In Rei's previous life, there had been 2 Hunter x Hunter anime adaptations. Setting aside the dated visuals, the first version's pacing and music far surpassed the remake. Rei naturally made use of that advantage. The original soundtrack had already been composed and delivered long ago, and the studio adopted it wholesale. So when the broadcast began at 9 sharp, manga readers were quickly pulled into the farewell scene between Gon and Aunt Mito. With emotional voice acting and a perfectly timed score, the scene surpassed the manga itself. And once the episode ended, the real frenzy began. The next morning, Misaki arrived early at the Hojimori Group editorial office. By then, every employee, whether they worked on Dream Comic Journal or not, was talking about Hunter. As she stepped inside, voices greeted her from all directions. "Morning, Misaki. Misaki's here. We're all waiting on Capital Television to send over last night's ratings. Judging by the buzz after episode 1, Hunter's no worse than Echoes of the End's premiere. The One Punch Man fans are really showing up, so many of them are posting about Hunter. We're all Shirogane fans anyway. No need to split hairs." What started as greetings quickly turned into a heated discussion. Though none of them were directly involved with the Hunter manga, at Hojimori Group, one success lifted everyone. If the journal sold well and the stock rose, their pay rose too. From that perspective, they owed Rei genuine thanks. And seeing Misaki now, any lingering jealousy quietly melted away. Rumors said her younger sister, Saki, and Shirogane had been dating since high school. If that were true, then envy was pointless. Misaki hadn't stumbled onto a genius through luck, she had unearthed him through sheer effort. Misaki sat at her desk, sorting documents, but her thoughts were far away. What would the first episode's rating be? Plenty of popular manga had collapsed once adapted into anime. Some stories simply didn't translate well to the screen. Hunter probably wouldn't be one of them, but until the numbers arrived, she couldn't help worrying. The answer came quickly. Capital Television compiled the morning data and sent it directly to Hojimori Group. When Editor-in-Chief Han posted the figure in the company chat, the office erupted. 5.95%. A collective sigh of relief followed. No one had expected Hunter x Hunter to surpass One Punch Man. Even landing slightly behind Echoes of the End would be acceptable. After all, this was only the premiere. Ratings could still climb. As long as the gap wasn't large. And Hunter's first episode rating was indeed just a hair behind Echoes of the End, by less than 0.1%. Next week, it could easily reverse. Misaki passed the news along to Rei. He considered it briefly, then accepted it with a calm smile. Some series simply didn't explode on screen. Take One Piece for example. Its anime ratings hovered at mediocre levels year after year. Manga fans routinely mocked the later seasons for their declining animation quality, yet the IP still generated over $30 billion, with more than $1 billion annually from licensing and merchandise alone. The manga was the true juggernaut. The anime was just icing. One Punch Man was the opposite case. The webcomic had been only moderately popular until the anime adaptation detonated worldwide. Demon Slayer followed a similar path, an anime transforming a decent manga into a global phenomenon. As for Hunter x Hunter, it had only trailed One Punch Man in ratings. Within the domestic animation industry, this debut was still the stuff of dreams. Hojimori Group quickly published the numbers on its official website. By then, the shape of the July, Week 1 anime battlefield was unmistakable. One Punch Man remained far ahead. But Echoes of the End and Hunter x Hunter had officially entered the confrontation every industry insider was watching. They had fought fiercely in manga rankings. Now, their anime adaptations were locked in direct competition. With a gap this small, they might as well have been tied. Chapter 177, Famous Scene Scheduled. Over the next 3 weeks, the two animated adaptations, Hunter and Echoes of the End, gave the Japanese animation industry a first-hand lesson in what constant reversal really meant. Not only did both series consistently break the 6% viewership mark, they effectively took turns occupying second place in the quarterly ratings. If Echoes of the End delivered a particularly strong episode that week, it would edge out Hunter by a narrow margin. When Hunter struck back with a standout episode, the positions flipped again. Overall, however, the ratings for both hovered just below 6.1%, locked in a dead heat. Towering above them was One Punch Man. During the same period, it was utterly unrivaled. The climactic battle between the Hero Association's S-Class heroes and Psycho Orakai. Genos's eye-catching performance as the so-called funding warrior. And above all, the overwhelming visual experience made possible by the anime's staggering investment. Even in manga form, this arc had been shocking. Its artwork was explosive, dense, and relentlessly expressive, especially the battle between Tatsumaki and Psycho Orakai. It was the kind of draw-until-you-collapse style that stunned even readers unfamiliar with manga. For fans long accustomed to perfunctory art from rushed weekly schedules, Murata's drafts were something you couldn't unsee. After witnessing that level of craftsmanship, going back felt impossible. Naturally, translating such detail and intensity into animation demanded massive funding. But Rei had no intention of stretching the Psycho Orakai plot indefinitely. The Monster Association arc had only 3 true pillars. Early stage, the battle against Psycho Orakai. Middle stage, the hero's struggle against the dragon-level monsters. Late stage, Saitama vs. Garu. He couldn't, and wouldn't, faithfully reproduce every minor detour from the original manga. For instance, cutting away from a life-or-death battlefield to linger on Suiryu lying in a hospital bed, agonizing over his desire to become a hero, added little to the core narrative. Some scenes simply had to be cut. And so, as July drew to a close, One Punch Man's ratings began climbing again, slowly but steadily, like toothpaste being squeezed from the tube. Thanks to the relentless intensity of the final 2 weeks' battles, viewership surged to 6.93%. By the end of July, the 5th episode of Season 4 aired. After 3 consecutive episodes focused on the hero's hard-won victory over Psycho Orakai, a new nightmare descended on the battlefield. A group of dragon-level monsters from the Monster Association. Evil Natural Water. Black Sperm. Führer Ugly. Homeless Emperor. Tatsumaki collapsed from exhaustion after back-to-back battles. Sweet Mask was so revolted by Ugly Führer's appearance that his mental state shattered instantly, leading to a swift and humiliating defeat. Even an S-class powerhouse like Super Alloy Blacklight had his fighting spirit crushed after encountering Garu, spiraling into emotional collapse and complete incapacitation. Genos fared no better. All 4 of his limbs were severed, leaving him a broken figure sprawled on the battlefield, unable to rise. Of course, there had been far too many scenes of the unbeatable legend and funding warrior losing spectacularly for audiences to be shocked anymore. His defeat was met with grim acceptance. By the midpoint of the episode, most of the remaining S-class heroes were injured, exhausted, or barely standing. The episode even showcased the infamous scene of Black Sperm, alone, holding off 4 S-class heroes simultaneously. Before the dragon-level monsters had even begun to exert themselves, the Hero Association's elite had already fallen. From beginning to middle, the 5th episode was drenched in despair. Viewers watching knew exactly what this meant. They were waiting for that man. That's right. Saitama. But if this hopeless situation were resolved simply by Saitama appearing and sweeping everything away, then his identity as an overwhelming trump card would be laid bare. Many viewers worried that revealing his true strength too directly would rob the story of its tension. Just as that anxiety peaked, the ending theme faded out. Then, the preview for episode 6 dropped. And with it, the fandom exploded. The preview was absurdly simple. One sentence. One image. At the moment the Hero Association faces life and death, the one who arrives on the battlefield is that person. The strongest man on earth, King. The image showed King in a plaid shirt, standing at a commanding height, gazing down with oppressive calm at the fallen S-class heroes below. When the surviving heroes saw him arrive, their faces broke into smiles, expressions of absolute certainty, as if victory were already secured. Another colored still depicted the dragon-level monsters reacting in shock, their expressions twisting as though confronted by an unimaginable threat. No further explanation was needed. The preview said everything. Holy crap, it's actually this development. That's evil. Teacher Shirogane, I'm already laughing. King saving the day? King, who's been slacking off for 20 chapters, is this really his stage? Why would you cut it off here? This is torture. What's King going to do? Any one of those dragon-level monsters could kill him instantly. I don't know, is Saitama about to show up as a summoned beast again? Something's off. How could Saitama appear here? If he actually shows up, his strength gets fully exposed. In that case, what's the point of bringing King in at all? Yeah, that'd be completely redundant. Then what else could it be? There's no way King can actually defeat that group of monsters, right? Forget evil natural water and ugly Führer, black sperm alone is insane. So many clones, and they can even merge into yellow sperm. That's completely broken. It feels like black sperm by himself could wipe out the entire Hero Association. You're overrating black sperm. I don't think he could beat Tatsumaki one-on-one. After what the Monster Association arc has shown, Tatsumaki's strength is definitely not below Boros. That's nonsense. Tatsumaki is absolutely weaker than Boros. Why are you two suddenly arguing about Tatsumaki versus Boros? Weren't we talking about how King is supposed to resolve this crisis? And if we're talking about the strongest below Saitama, why isn't Orakai even in the conversation? Who? Orakai? Ha ha ha, Orakai? You're joking. That trash. Mindless monsters are all trash. Psycho Orakai too. He only survived by relying on sneak attacks and dirty tricks. If it were a clean fight, Tatsumaki would have soloed him. Ugh, Teacher Shirogane is too good at edging people. I feel miserable right now. There are still 7 days until the next episode, how am I supposed to survive this? I just hope the next episode has amazing character development. Honestly, the biggest reason I'm still watching is King. Same. I'm way more excited to see King face those dragon-level monsters than Saitama fighting Garu. Who isn't? To be honest, my favorite character isn't even Saitama anymore, it's King. Only his storyline gives me a real sense of immersion. Exactly. Everyone else is either a cyborg, an Esper, or some superhuman freak. King's the only normal person. Alright, see you all next week. Talking here won't change anything anyway, we just have to wait 7 days. Ugh. I'm going to spam Teacher Shirogane's account. Count me in. After the 5th episode of One Punch Man Season 4 finished airing, it didn't take long. That very night, the hot search. King is rushing to the battlefield, shot straight to the top of the trending lists across major anime forums. The Monster Association arc had been building momentum for over half a year, packed with countless iconic battle scenes. Whether it was Orakai or Psycho Orakai, every major confrontation had been absurdly expensive to animate. Yet none of them had sparked discussion on this scale. Only King. Within the One Punch Man fanbase, King occupied a status unlike any other character. Across the entire original work, aside from the protagonist Saitama himself, King was the character with the densest concentration of running gags, the sharpest humor, and, at least in REI's eyes, the most successful side character development. And now, King's most iconic scene from the original work was finally about to debut in this Japan. Chapter 178, The Warm-Up. With the One Punch Man anime now airing, the original manga's Monster Association arc had reached its mid to late stage, and the most brilliant portion of the source material was approaching its conclusion. Rei naturally wouldn't miss this opportunity. As an investor, he was prepared to inject whatever additional marketing budget was needed. The revenue-sharing adaptation deal between One Punch Man and the Pacific Federation, leading game company, was finalized at lightning speed. Rei not only served as the IP provider for One Punch Man, but also contributed additional funding toward the game's development and early promotion. After launch, he would personally support marketing as the original creator, as stipulated in the agreement. He held partial decision-making authority over the game. Once it went live, his opinions on operations and content updates carried real weight. In exchange, he received 20% of all post-launch revenue. At first glance, that percentage might seem low. In reality, most anime IP games returned only around 10% to the rights holder. The rest was divided among the development studio, the publisher, and distribution platforms, Android and iOS in Rei's past life, or Steam for PC titles. Securing 20% was possible only because One Punch Man was white-hot and because Rei negotiated from a position of overwhelming leverage, brandishing his copyright ownership to demand a slice of development funding. Once the contracts were signed and the money wired, Rei could comfortably step back into a hands-off chairman's role. Although he retained voting rights over operations, he had no intention of exercising them unless the development team steered the project into truly absurd territory. He understood his role clearly. It was far better to devote his energy to producing more content, continuing to import blockbuster ideas from his past life into this Japan, than to micromanage business operations. Naturally, One Punch Man's game adaptations would not stop at a single title. Mobile games, PC releases, even casual mini-games were already under discussion, and film studios were lining up to inquire about live-action rights. Truthfully, Rei had been devoting more monthly effort to One Punch Man than to Hunter x Hunter. But finally, it's almost over. Glancing at his phone's calendar, Rei saw that in less than 2 months, the 4-season juggernaut that had ignited the Japan, and the world, would pause, its current run temporarily concluded. Meanwhile, Hunter x Hunter's manga still had another month before the Phantom Troop arc wrapped up and the story transitioned into Greed Island. At the current pace, by January of the following year, the series would reach its iconic Chimera Ant arc. Given Hunter's popularity, Hojimori Group had long since scheduled game adaptations. It was even possible that a One Punch Man title would launch alongside a Hunter x Hunter game, pitting the two IPs directly against each other. Rei considered the thought briefly, then shrugged it off. Over the next few days, 2 topics dominated conversations surrounding him. First, Hunter x Hunter's anime debut sent tankbon sales soaring. On Tuesday, Hojimori Group announced that the series had surpassed 16 million copies per volume. Every industry insider had predicted exactly this outcome. Even before the anime aired, Hunter had averaged around 15 million copies per volume. The adaptation simply poured rocket fuel onto an already blazing fire. And this milestone had been reached barely a month after the first episode's broadcast. On the day the numbers were released, the animation press flooded the airwaves with coverage. By comparison, Echoes of the End currently stood at 19.5 million copies per volume nationwide. Despite the launch of its 6th anime season, the boost to its manga sales had clearly plateaued. Everyone who could be converted already had been. But Hunter, who could guess its ceiling? After the Your New City arc, could Shirogane deliver something even more gripping? With Hunter now at 16 million copies per volume, could the 3.5 million gap be closed during the anime's run, allowing it to overtake Echoes of the End and become Japan's top-selling ongoing manga? And more importantly, how would the stock market duel between Hojimori Group and Neon Nest Group, the conglomerate backing Monogatari comic, play out? If Hunter seized the #1 spot, could it also propel Dream Comic to weekly sales supremacy? Media outlets sprouted articles on the rivalry like bamboo after spring rain. Fans of Rei and Echoes of the End finally realized what this race meant for their favorite creators. Online skirmishes between the two camps sharpened into open warfare. Yet before the weekend episodes arrived, Friday stole every headline. That day, every other voice in Japan's anime sphere was drowned out. After a week of relentless cliffhangers, 10 million One Punch Man fans finally got what they had been craving. From early afternoon onward, the fandom surged online. Friday at last, brothers, do you know how long I've waited? 7 days. Wrong, 7 years. Every day felt like a year. Same. When I started watching, I didn't care about Saitama at all. Now I only want King. So the anime really ends at 6 episodes? I refuse to believe it. It's not ending, just pausing. And honestly, that's fine. Saitama never grows stronger, every arc fleshes out the side characters. Let Shirogane recharge and come back for season 5 when inspiration hits. Forget seasons, tonight belongs to King. I won't forgive the show if it disrespects my King. Yet. I still can't imagine how King survives this battlefield, but I trust Shirogane. Shirogane, please, no tearful farewells, no power exposure sobbing apologies. Just let King shine. Chapter 179, One Man Suppresses 4 Dragons. Emi's fingers flew across the keyboard, her hands a blur. First, she furiously flamed a group of echoes of the End fans who were arguing with her. Then, she turned her fire on several bloggers who specialized in trashing the Hunter and One Punch Man anime online. Finally, Emi checked the time. 3 minutes. In 3 minutes, the 6th episode of One Punch Man Season 4 would begin airing. She immediately sprang up from her chair, rushed into the living room, turned on the TV, and tuned it to Capital TV. Then she quickly prepared snacks and drinks, setting everything neatly on the table. After checking that nothing was missing. Perfect. Emi smiled in satisfaction. As a loyal fan of Shirogane for over 3 years, she had followed every one of REI's works without exception. She had attended every manga signing event REI held in Japan. She was also the administrator of several major fan groups. Naturally, every Friday to Sunday evening was sacred viewing time. At last, 8 o'clock arrived. The iconic One Punch Man theme song began to play. In the opening, various S-class monsters from earlier arcs flashed by in quick succession. Then the opening ended. The story picked up exactly where it had left off last week. And this week's episode title appeared The Strongest Man. Emi clenched her lips, trying hard not to laugh. As everyone knew, this series had 2 strongest men. One of them was the protagonist, Saitama. He was the strongest in terms of sheer power, yet almost no one in the story knew his true strength. The other was the man everyone believed to be the strongest. All of Saitama's accomplishments, defeating Vaccine Man, the Giant Brothers, Elder Centipede, had been attributed to him. Even though no one in the Hero Association had ever seen him make a move, his title as the world's strongest man was completely unquestioned. That man was King. And judging from last week's preview, this strongest man could only be him. Emi focused intently on the screen. The heavily injured super alloy black light stared at the newly fused golden sperm, whose smooth, sculpted muscles gleamed unnaturally after merging countless black sperm clones. There are, actually, muscles in this world that shine brighter than mine? This is impossible. Emi burst out laughing. Cruel as it was there really someone who would mentally collapse just because another man's muscles were better than his? And this guy was an S-class hero? As Golden Sperm prepared to attack the fallen heroes, Genos, his limbs already torn apart, dragged his shattered body forward. Gritting his teeth, he bit down on Tornado's clothes, trying to pull the unconscious Esper away from the battlefield. Golden Sperm sneered. The surrounding black sperm clones grinned viciously, ready to strike. Then, thump! A deep, rhythmic sound echoed through the battlefield. Emi froze for a split second, then her eyes lit up. The sound of a heartbeat. King's heartbeat. The infamous King engine. A sound born from terror, yet interpreted by the world as the roar of overwhelming fighting spirit. King stood atop a pile of rubble at the edge of the massive crater. His eyes were dark. His expression solemn. He wore nothing more than a simple otaku-style plaid shirt, yet his arms-crossed posture was relaxed, almost casual. From every angle, he radiated an aura of absolute dominance, one that seemed to look down on everything before him. Putting aside King's true thoughts, this entrance sent a crystal-clear message to everyone present. I'm not targeting anyone in particular. I'm saying everyone here is trash. The remaining Hero Association members were completely spent. And the man who had just arrived on the battlefield, King, now stood alone before the dragon-level monster Evil Natural Water. The peak dragon-level threat Homeless Emperor. And Golden Sperm, who had already defeated 4 S-class heroes by himself after completing his fusion. In the original version, Psychos would have been present as well. But in the Muradari draw, Psychos and Orokai had already been defeated through combined efforts. Which meant, King was facing 3 top-tier dragon-level monsters by himself. Emi's heart tightened. She had been eagerly anticipating this scene, but did it really make sense? Was King really stepping forward, risking his life, just to save Genos, Saitama's disciple? Wouldn't any one of those dragon-level monsters be able to reduce him to dust with a casual attack? On screen, King's expression never changed. Even in the depths of terror, his face looked as calm and unshakable as that of the strongest man alive. Yet inside, he was already drowning in despair. And then, the most iconic moment arrived. King stood perfectly still, gazing down at the center of the battlefield with cold disdain. The dragon-level monsters hesitated. None of them dared to move. They might not know King's true strength, but how could they not know the strength of Elder Centipede? The news that Elder Centipede had been slain by King with a single punch was known to everyone. King, it's over, I'm dead. Homeless Emperor, King has almost no combat records, yet his ability to conceal information is terrifying. No wonder he's called the world's strongest man, thought Homeless Emperor. Golden Sperm, even though we've taken the Hero Association hostage here, King's rumored to be so powerful he can neutralize opponents without lifting a finger. We absolutely cannot be careless. No matter how many calculations they ran in their heads, reality could not be avoided forever. Homeless Emperor struck first. A massive sphere of light condensed in his palm, radiating terrifying power, bright enough to illuminate the entire night sky. Just out of curiosity, what happens if I touch that light ball? King asked calmly. You'll be vaporized. Homeless Emperor sneered. Even so, you remain unfazed? King, let me shatter that composure of yours. Emi was already clutching her stomach, squirming uncontrollably on the sofa. How could this be this funny? What exactly are you idiots even testing for? And King, you're obviously so scared you're about to wet your pants, so why does your face still look this terrifying? Is this some kind of innate talent? Wait. Haven't you noticed yet? King spoke again, tone perfectly even. The rubble beneath your feet is extremely unstable. It's quite dangerous. Just a friendly reminder. Of course, King wasn't issuing a warning. He was desperately stalling, clawing for time in the only way he knew how. He was still hoping Saitama would arrive and save him, just like always. So even delaying 1 second mattered. But to Homeless Emperor, the timing made no sense. Why would King say something like this right now? His expression immediately stiffened. He unconsciously shifted into a defensive stance, feet pigeon-toed, mind racing. Is King implying that he can instantly dodge my light ball and kill me? Standing there, there's no way I could avoid him. A sentence suddenly surfaced in Emi's mind. King's strength exists entirely inside your imagination. His past achievements were simply too terrifying. After all, which powerful monster in this world hadn't been defeated by Saitama, only for all the credit to be dumped onto King? From Vaccine Man to Elder Centipede, every victory had built King into a walking legend. The premise was ridiculous. Completely unreasonable. And yet, watching it unfold, it didn't feel forced at all. If Emi were one of these monsters, she would be just as cautious. Despite laughing non-stop, her palms were starting to sweat. Her heart rate picked up. Could King really survive this crisis purely by letting the enemies destroy themselves mentally? Homeless Emperor was already unraveling. But what about Golden Sperm? An evil natural water lurking nearby? Then the situation escalated even further into madness. King! Today I'll expose your true identity! Homeless Emperor shouted, furious after being frightened so thoroughly. King, who was even more terrified, instantly misunderstood. True identity? He thought he had been exposed. Panicking, he blurted out, I sincerely apologize for a regular person appearing here. The phrase regular person detonated Homeless Emperor's psyche. Through Homeless Emperor's spiraling thoughts, Emi finally understood. Homeless Emperor himself had once been nothing more than an ordinary man. He had merely been granted power by a god. At his core, he was still human. King's words made him believe he'd been seen through completely. His psychological defenses shattered. Black Sperm. Attack, now! Why should I expose myself in front of King just for you? The black sperm clones replied solemnly. Evil natural water attacks indiscriminately when it senses killing intent, yet it hasn't reacted to King at all. Does that mean King has already seen through natural water and concealed his killing intent? No, that's not it. King doesn't even consider us enemies. Who would feel killing intent toward ants that could be crushed at any moment? He doesn't even have me in his eyes, damn it. Emmy's mouth fell open. Absurd as it was, black sperm's reasoning actually made sense. After all, the possibility that King was just a weak human had to be excluded. Otherwise, how had Elder Centipede died? With King standing here, evil natural water unmoving, dragon-level monsters frozen, this explanation was the only one left. As expected of you, Teacher Shirogane. How did you even come up with this? Did you laugh while writing it? Emmy finally lost it. She rolled off the sofa onto the floor, clutching her stomach, laughing so hard she couldn't breathe. Chapter 180, The Cliffhanger. The plot of the TV series progressed rapidly. While King used the overwhelming pressure of the King engine to suppress several dragon-level monsters, on the other side of the battlefield, several S-class heroes who had lost their physical strength, but had not yet fainted, were quietly devising a plan. The S-class hero Child Emperor even sent the communication-type mechanical insects he had created flying to each hero's ear, issuing commands in a low voice. All heroes must strike together. Pressure their positioning and force the monsters to line up in as straight an area as possible. Emmy froze and stopped smiling. Wait, there's another expert? Are you planning to annihilate these dragon-level monsters with the satellite laser? Zombie Eamon asked quietly into the communicator. On screen, Child Emperor answered with complete confidence. We have a weapon far more powerful and effective than any artificial satellite laser, and that weapon is King. At that moment, all the S-class heroes still standing at the center of the battlefield turned their gazes toward King. Genos. Atomic Samurai. Child Emperor. Zombie Eamon. Pori prisoner. We'll draw all the monsters into a straight zone, Child Emperor continued, clearly proud of the plan. Then King will use his ultimate secret technique, the ultimate Hellfire Burst Wave Motion Cannon, to instantly kill all of them. The moment the name Ultimate Hellfire Burst Wave Motion Cannon was spoken, confidence filled every S-class hero's eyes. No one in this world had ever seen King take action. But no one doubted the power of his move. No one. Except King himself. In the animation, the pounding sound of the King engine, his fearful heartbeat, grew louder and louder. King's expression remained calm and composed. But from Emmy's point of view, she was absolutely certain of one thing. King was hearing about this so-called ultimate move, Ultimate Hellfire Burst Wave Motion Cannon, for the very first time in his life. The episode ended right there. Just as the S-class heroes believed victory was already assured and began celebrating prematurely, sweat slowly formed on King's forehead. How could he possibly know any cannon? He was just an ordinary person. The moment the ending theme song began to play, Emmy's smile froze. She slapped her thigh without thinking. Hiss. That hurts. She held up her bright red palm, but inside her heart, she was screaming. How can it end here? Is this a cliffhanger a human being could come up with? This episode could easily be called the most exciting installment since the start of One Punch Man Season 4. King, a key supporting character who had been carefully built up since Season 2, had finally reached his biggest meme-worthy and highlight moment in the entire work. And yet, after the episode aired, what followed wasn't praise. It was resentment. Countless animation fans across Japan poured their frustration directly onto REI. So Shirogane-sensei did this on purpose, didn't he? I'd rather he ended the episode 2 minutes earlier. What am I supposed to do now? Suffer for another whole week? The more happily I laughed during the episode, the more miserable I felt at the end. This cliffhanger is downright cruel. So this is the cliffhanger style of the #1 genius in Japan's animation world? I'm impressed. It's too painful. Can any employee at Illumination Production please leak a spoiler about how King fires the ultimate Hellfire Burst Wave Motion Cannon next episode? The build-up's gone this far, there's no way the monsters just scare themselves away. Is he really going to summon Saitama-sensei? No, no, no. King's most charming moment is when he's the strongest man on Earth. If the truth comes out, both King's and Saitama's characterizations collapse, and so does the anime. Then what's the solution? If Saitama doesn't step in, how can King possibly clean up this mess and deal with those dragon-level monsters? I'm willing to call this the funniest and most captivating anime episode I've seen in years. It's just way too short. Needless to say, the Monster Association arc has officially reached god-tier status here. If it finishes at this quality, I'll buy any merchandise it releases. Honestly, with Season 4 produced up to this point, the rest of the plot should already be finished, right? Shirogane-sensei, just release all the episodes next week. Stop torturing us. And while you're at it, put up all the pre-order links, I'll buy everything. All of it. After the 6th episode aired, almost the entire One Punch Man fanbase was dragged out into the open. Forum activity surged far beyond normal levels. In fact, even in one's original manga, the plot of Saitama fighting Garu might not have been as emotionally turbulent or eye-catching to readers as this section of the story. And the next day, the ratings were announced. One Punch Man Season 4, Episode 6, 6.97%. Compared with the previous week, the increase was dramatic. More importantly, the viewership data itself was extremely subtle. It stood just one step away from breaking the 7% threshold. Once this result was made public, the entire Japanese animation industry seemed to fall into collective silence. If one looked only at television animation, the last work to exceed a 7% rating had aired more than 12 years ago. And in the internet era, television ratings became more valuable the higher they climbed. 12 years ago, entertainment options were limited. For most people, leisure meant television, novels, manga, little else. Today, with streaming platforms, short video apps, games, and social media fragmenting attention, achieving the same rating carried vastly different weight. A 7% rating in this era was worth far more than a 7% rating in the past. And this wasn't limited to Japan alone. In the 31 overseas countries that imported One Punch Man, the opening ratings ranked near the top as well, drawing widespread praise from foreign audiences. In some ways, the series' hero and monster framework aligned even more closely with overseas aesthetics than with domestic tastes. After nearly a year of continuous broadcasting, One Punch Man had undeniably become a global phenomenon. Within Japan, its reputation among core anime fans still lagged slightly behind Hunter x Hunter. But thanks to its theme and accessibility, One Punch Man far surpassed Hunter in worldwide popularity. That said, with the launch of the Hunter x Hunter anime, this gap was steadily narrowing. In Rei's previous life, One Punch Man had maintained a slight edge globally. In this world, however, even Rei couldn't predict how things would ultimately unfold. After all, One Punch Man's rise had been almost entirely organic, no major capital backing, no aggressive corporate push. It relied purely on content quality and an endless wave of memes spreading across the world. Hunter x Hunter, on the other hand, stood on a very different foundation. Behind it was the Hojimori Group, a publishing giant with a market value in the tens of billions, ranked second nationwide. If such a conglomerate fully mobilized its resources, how far could it propel Hunter? Over the next 2 days, the latest episodes of Echoes of the End and Hunter x Hunter aired in succession. Yet because One Punch Man fans were extraordinarily active, and because a significant portion of them also chose to follow Hunter x Hunter that week out of trust and support for Rei. When the final weekend ratings were released on Monday, the results stunned the industry. Hunter x Hunter, 6.13%. Echoes of the End, 6.07%. The two series temporarily claimed second and third place in weekly animation ratings. Within the Japanese animation industry, a strange tension settled in. Something felt wrong. Under normal circumstances, the early arcs of Hunter x Hunter should never have achieved such numbers. At that stage, the world building was incomplete, the cast not fully established. The story was engaging, but only engaging. How could it suppress a 6-season juggernaut like Echoes of the End by such a margin? The answer was obvious. It was the spillover. One Punch Man fans had poured into Hunter x Hunter en masse under the bundled promotion orchestrated by Rei and the Hojimori Group. Some media outlets and Echoes of the End fans cried foul online, calling the situation unfair. Those complaints only fueled more mockery. What, exactly, was unfair? If they weren't satisfied, they were free to have Echoes of the End's author create a second or third hit anime and link their IPs together. But reality was reality. At this rate, Echoes of the End was clearly sliding toward third place for the season. Losing to One Punch Man was understandable. But losing to Hunter times Hunter as well?
Thanks for listening.